Chapter 1. AD 3110. When Jianghu, a game that is said to have a history of 1,100 years, was reoperated, in just 1 week it set a new record for the number of players of various online games online at the same time in the human world. Antique buildings, well-tested costumes, and moves with perfect special effects. Jianghu has only been in service for more than a month, but it has already attracted countless players to the game, and it continues to attract new players. The game world is vast and has no boundaries. From the vast grasslands to the water towns with small bridges and flowing water, from the small islands in the East China Sea surrounded by huge waves to the vast and silent desert, new players are constantly being born everywhere. When new players were learning martial arts at their respective initial entry points and running errands for NPCs, a battle was taking place in a dense forest far away from where humans gathered. The two sides fighting are a man and a woman whose strength is very different. This man has disheveled hair, ragged clothes, ruthless attacks, crazy and irrational eyes, and is obviously a madman. Although this madman is not sane, his martial arts is very advanced. Such a madman with outstanding strength and deep inner strength, who can instantly kill most of the players in the game with a single move. If the players encounter him, they will definitely avoid him and take a detour. And Chomhua, who somehow provoked this madman, was also complaining secretly. When she woke up after the car accident, she knew she had traveled to a game world. Before I could figure out what kind of world this was, I was entangled by this terrifying NPC. What's worse is that she still has a terrible, poisoned debuff hanging on her body. The attributes of the whole body are reduced by 80%. The internal energy is disordered and unable to practice, and blood loss continues. She is a PvP player and is quite good at PK fighting, but PK in holographic games is another matter. Fortunately, Chomhua calmed down quickly. She traveled through time with her own character account. She has been playing this character for more than 3 years, and she is already familiar with the characteristics of the moves. Even though she was just an ordinary person who knew 2 or 3 anti-wolf moves, at this time, it was as if she really possessed martial arts. Each move was smooth and natural, and she relied on instinct to barely fight the strong man for a few moves. But that's about it. You ungrateful person, with so little strength, do you look down on me, Grandpa? The strong man said angrily. He is tall, with a strong back and strong waist, and the strong muscles on the outside show the infinite power contained in this strong man's body. He pushed forward with both hands to the right, and 2 waves of energy with the power to destroy everything headed towards his target unstoppably. Chomhua's movements were quite dexterous, but the opponent's movements were not sluggish. He opened and closed his fists with each palm, as if the world was in the palm of his fist. There was a huge difference in strength between the two sides. She had just dodged the strong man's attack in embarrassment, but now she saw that his next attack was coming, and she had no time to dodge. Her expression changed, and she had to defend in favor of attack, barely holding her sword to parry. But the opponent's inner strength was too deep, and the power contained in his palm was definitely not something she could resist. Even though she used all her strength to block this move, most of her blood was still knocked out by this blow. Not only that, the powerful attack also caused her inner breath to surge, and her eyes suddenly blurred, her legs weakened, and she fell to her knees. The strong man laughed wildly again, kicked her in the chest again, kicked her away, and fell into the thick layer of fallen leaves, making no sound again. Why can't you fight so hard? The strong man walked up to Chomhua in a few steps, leaned down, and sounded very disappointed. After that kick, Chomhua's blood volume suddenly bottomed out, and he was judged by the system to be seriously injured and comatose. Even so, she could still be aware of the movements around her. When she heard the other party's words, she couldn't help but feel helpless. Life and death is normal in the game, and the initial pain level of this holographic game is the default minimum value. The scene looks a bit miserable, but in fact nothing happens. Being killed by someone whose strength far exceeded his own, Chonghua could only consider himself unlucky and return to the camp to resurrect, so that he could fight again one day when he was stronger. Just at this time, several options popped up, including asking nearby players for help, asking specific players for help, and asking nearby NPCs for help. In short, there was only help, and there was no option to resurrect in place or return to the camp. Just when she was about to tentatively choose to seek help from a nearby NPC, the strong man suddenly put his right hand on her shoulder. A comfortable airflow flowed down from the shoulder to the limbs. The blood volume in the character's status bar also gradually increased until about 20%, and the strong man stopped delivering internal energy to Chonghua. Her condition was no longer seriously injured and comatose, so the system took back those options for help. The strong man kicked Chonghua and said, "Why are you pretending to be dead? Get up here, Grandpa." After the other party said this, Chonghua opened his eyes, stood up, and meditated cross-legged to restore his energy and blood. She recovered her vitality and blood, and the strong man also watched her recover, but his expression was not good, and he looked fierce. Chonghua didn't know the other party's purpose, so he was secretly vigilant while observing his current state. She noticed that in addition to a poisoning debuff on her status bar, there was also a serious injury debuff that reduced the speed of practice. However, this seriously injured debuff is of no use to her. The poisoned state not only weakened her strength by 80%, but also stagnated her internal strength training. It didn't matter if she had more serious injuries. She had just arrived and the situation was still being explored. I don't know what went wrong during the time travel. Although she traveled to this world with her account and her person, the package was empty except for an ancient book like Di Bao. Fortunately, although Di Bao looks like an ordinary book on the outside, it has a lot of things inside. It includes a beginner's guide, official announcements, game information, and a player interaction area, which is commonly known as the player forum. But before she could understand further, she was interrupted by the strong man who suddenly rushed out. Thinking of this, Chonghua glanced at the strong man not far away who was watching eagerly. At this time, the health value happened to be fully restored, and the strong man slapped him again. Although she was meditating to recover her health, she was always vigilant, so whenever the opponent made a move, she would dodge and fight back. I don't know why, but this strong man's attack was much weaker this time. Although the attack was sharp, it was not overwhelming, and he was seriously injured and fell to the ground after a few hits. This man has a weird mind, and he only has one thought every half minute. Chonghua knew he couldn't beat him, and he didn't dare to offend him, so he just wandered away and planned his escape. But the strong man seemed to know what she was thinking and shouted angrily, "Grandpa, I will be more serious. When Grandpa is happy with the beating, I will naturally spare your life." The opponent's strength was much higher than hers, and the situation was stronger than him. Chonghua naturally understood the current situation. Although he had not given up the idea of looking for a chance to escape, he also fought with this person seriously. Although this strong man restrained his attack slightly, it was impossible to really finish it. Chonghua fought with the opponent countless times, and was seriously injured and fell to the ground countless times before being rescued. It sounds miserable, but it's not without gain. The opponent is a powerful and highly intelligent NPC, with every move hiding a secret. Chonghua himself loves PK competition, and the poisoning debuff on his body cannot be eliminated in a short time, so he is not afraid of the so-called serious injury debuff. Now that she has a master whose PK skills far exceed hers, where can she find this good thing? It's a pity that this master has a temperamental temper. During the fight, if Chonghua didn't use any move to the opponent's liking, or if she didn't dodge in time, the opponent would curse and get angry at her, and his attacks would be much harsher. Of course, sometimes the strong man would also laugh and give her some advice. Probably most wizards have weird tempers, and there are people with similar personalities around Chonghua, so except for sometimes being frightened by the other person's actions, most of the time he is calm. They fought for several hours, until the sun set. The strong man was hungry and glanced at her. "Go, get me something to eat." It was dinner time, and Chomhwa also had a hunger debuff on her body. She originally wanted to say, "It's hard for a clever woman to make a meal without rice." But then she remembered that although her cooking level was not as good as medicine, which is the character's main life profession, it should be more than enough to make a barbecue. There was a lot of game in the dense forest. She caught some pheasants and hares, lit a fire, peeled the skins and cleaned them skillfully, and then roasted them on the fire. After a while, even though there was no seasoning, the meat was fragrant. The strong man stared straight at the barbecue on the fire. After Chomhwa agreed, he immediately grabbed it and started eating hungrily. The other party focused on the food, and Chomhwa finally had the opportunity to read the Dibao in the package. She found the game information and beginner's guide section in Dibao, read it at a glance, and quickly understood the current situation. She is no stranger to this game, that she has traveled through time. Thousands of years ago, she was also lucky enough to experience the predecessor of this holographic online game, an ancient martial arts online game called Jianghu. However, the Jianghu she knew was a regular keyboard online game, not a holographic online game from this 1,000 years ago. The character account that Chomhwa is carrying now belongs to another game, martial arts. Although the two games have similar styles, the game content is completely different. Is her data that traveled through time with professions, skills, and equipment from other games really compatible with this world? It seems to be quite compatible. The gameplay of martial arts focuses on reaching the maximum level, while Jianghu is constantly upgrading. As a veteran player of martial arts, Chomhwa's account is that of a swordsman with a full level of 80. However, in order to integrate with Jianghu after time travel, her experience bar disappeared, and instead the level and number of internal skills were displayed. Chomhwa took a look at the level of his internal energy, level 1 of the 8th level of Wenjianju. Compared to most players who have just entered the game and are still using the basic internal skills provided by the system, this feeling of getting something for nothing is quite good. This debuff on my body is really disturbing. When she had just fought with the strong man, she was not beaten to death many times, but was beaten to death by the debuff on her body that kept losing blood. She didn't have blood blue medicine or antidote pills to remove negative states, and she didn't know what to do for a while. While she was still thinking, the strong man who had eaten and drank fiercely cursed. "Why are you dawdling? Eat quickly and continue after eating." Chomhwa paused, thinking that he couldn't get any more information for the time being, so he put the Dibao back into the package and speeded up the food in his hands. Chomhwa had no idea what the identity of this NPC was, why he appeared in this almost uninhabited jungle, or why he had a sudden idea to embarrass her. The opponent made it clear that he insisted on practicing with her, probably because he thought the toy was durable and interesting. It just so happened that she needed time to get familiar with the fighting method of this game, so everyone got what they needed. Over the past few days, Chomhwa quickly became familiar with all aspects of the game while searching for available medicinal materials near the dense forest. Her account is from martial arts. Whether it is professional skills or life skills, there must be many differences from this Jianghu. So although her full-level pharmacist skills were still there, Chomhwa was not sure whether she could make the pills she needed. Fortunately, her character is not only compatible with internal skills and mental skills, but also has life skills that can be used. Most of the medicinal materials near this dense forest are low-level medicinal materials, and the small medicines made are also low-level. But these low-level medicines that continued to restore blood blue were enough for her to no longer be frightened by the constantly beating health points, and she felt more relaxed when fighting the madman. When she finds more advanced materials, antidote pills can also be made, which may have an effect on the terrifying debuff on her body. Just when Chomhwa's movements became more and more smooth and he was confident of finding an opportunity to escape, the strong man suddenly became ruthless during the last fight between the two, and he showed no mercy with several consecutive palms. Chomhwa noticed that the man's eyes suddenly became cloudy and even faintly red. He felt something bad in his heart and immediately made a decision to use Qinggong to escape. But just now, she was beaten by the opponent's consecutive blows until there was only a layer of blood left. The debuff on her body made her not only weaker in attack power, but also greatly reduced in health. After being accidentally swept by the wind of the palm, her health quickly bottomed out, and she fell to the ground seriously injured. After she was seriously injured and fell to the ground, the strong man didn't even look at her. He looked around nervously and angrily, and finally raised his head to the sky and let out a loud roar, which caused all the birds and animals in the forest to scatter and flee. Then, the strong man jumped and disappeared into the vast forest. After the battle, the system popped up several options. Chonghua thought for a while and chose ask for help from a nearby NPC, but unexpectedly, the system said the player is in a special map and the NPC cannot reach it. She had no other choice but to ask nearby players for help. This time the request for help was sent out very smoothly, probably because her location was too remote. After half an hour, 2 or 3 players came towards her from a distance. Chapter 2. There were 3 players who came to rescue her, 1 man and 2 women, all of whom looked to be 15 or 16 years old. The 2 girls look similar and wear the same set of clothes. They look like twin Tao. Their names are also paired. One is called Lemon Sweet and the other is called Blueberry Sour. The other boy was wearing a patched, shabby shirt and carrying a short stick behind his back. They enthusiastically rescued Chonghua and listened to Chonghua thank them and wave his hands rather embarrassedly. It's nothing. Chonghua didn't think so. She looked at the map before. This place is still not close to the nearest village and town, and the terrain is rugged. Most players will take a detour even if they get here. Unfortunately, for some unknown reason, the nearby rescue NPC could not come. If these people had not rescued her, she might have been judged to be dead by the system due to being seriously injured for too long. Character serious injury and character death are 2 completely different concepts. The former can be rescued and continue to walk in the game, while the latter is equivalent to deletion of the account. Her body had already been destroyed in the car accident. If even her soul was destroyed, it would be real death. To a certain extent, these 3 people are her saviors. Facing the people who had helped her a lot, she didn't know how to repay her. Her package became clean after traveling, with no money or equipment, and nothing but some low-level pills. While Chonghua was facing these people with very complicated emotions, these 3 boys and girls were paying attention to other aspects. They noticed that the internal strength of the woman in black was much higher than their own, and they were all a little surprised. Is this place so dangerous? Chonghua's initial internal strength was the 8th level of Wenjianju. Due to the debuff, his internal strength was only the 2nd level. Even so, this kind of internal strength is already of a very high level in the newly launched Jianghu server. In their eyes, players whose internal strength was much higher than theirs would be seriously injured in this dense forest, and several people couldn't help but feel even more worried. After hearing their question, Chonghua informed them of the madman's presence here, and several people shouted that it was scary. With such a time bomb in this dense forest, a few people didn't dare to stay, so they left together. They headed towards the nearest town as fast as they could. When their internal strength was low, they took medicine. They didn't relax a little until there were people nearby. At this time, the 3 of them and Chonghua's package had used up all the blue medicine, so they stopped temporarily and found a place to rest for a while. These 3 people were just at the age when they were curious about everything, and they happened to have another thrilling escape trip. After stopping, they all excitedly exchanged their thoughts with each other. This was the first time that Chonghua met someone from the 32nd century in a game. There was a generation gap of more than 1,000 years. In order to prevent too many mistakes from being exposed by talking too much, she basically listened to a few people talking and rarely spoke herself. Fortunately, they didn't care. Even if it was a small thing, they would talk to Chonghua excitedly, and the atmosphere was not awkward. Not long after, the 3 of them couldn't find out anything from Chonghua, but revealed most of their secrets. After they finished excitedly talking about their various emotions while running away with Qinggong, for some reason, the topic suddenly turned to Chonghua. Sister Chonghua, what kind of sect are you from? Buin said back, that sword on the back is so handsome. Unlike me, the clothes of the beggar clan are always dusty, and the more advanced the disciples, the more tattered their clothes are. He glanced at Chonghua, who was sitting cross-legged and meditating. He was dressed in black and had a simple long sword on his back. Although his face was pale, his aura was so sharp that no one dared to look at him. Thinking of this, I don't want to go back and smash my mouth. Although he looks handsome even in patches, it seems that he would have been more handsome if he had chosen the sword-wielding sect from the beginning. Seeing that the three of them were eagerly waiting for his answer, Chonghua thought for a while before speaking. My sect is Wenjian Pavilion. Asked Janga. I don't think I've ever heard of this sect. Of course, it is impossible to have heard of it. This sect is a sect in another game. She explained, this is a sect I joined accidentally. So, Sister Chonghua, you're the one who really encountered the adventure. Lemon Tian Tian said in surprise, actually, my progress is faster than others. Sister Chonghua, you're faster than me. It must be because your sex skills are more advanced. Seeing that the other party naturally classified her sect as Chiyu, Chonghua didn't explain it, but just smiled and acquiesced. Wenjianj does not exist in Jianghu, and she can only use adventures to explain her internal strength and skills. But she obviously greatly underestimated how attractive adventure is to the players in Jianghu. Jianghu is free to play. Counting the official sects announced and those known to players and posted online, there are hundreds of sects that have formal ways to get started. Among these sects, there's not only the famous Huashan sect of Wudong sect, but also the inconspicuous Kong Kong sect and Gopher sect, which are purely funny. Not only that, the game official claims that any account may encounter adventures and join the mysterious sect. Therefore, in Jianghu, you can often see many heroes trying to increase the favorability of NPCs everywhere in the hope of meeting mysterious masters. In this case, the strength of each sect is uneven. Competition among major sects is fierce, while small sects do not have deep foundations. Therefore, in addition to joining a sect through normal channels to obtain cultivation techniques, finding adventures, and receiving mysterious inheritance has become what every Jianghu player yearns for. But the reason why Chiyu is that it is elusive and erratic. Although there are people in the forum every day who say that they have encountered Chiyu, but compared to the entire Jianghu players, it is really a drop in the ocean. So when they heard that Chonghua admitted that he joined the sect because of Chiyu, the eyes of the three people suddenly became bright. She really couldn't refuse such a look, and she didn't dare to say anything more, so she just briefly and vaguely told them the process of adding Wenjian Pavilion to martial arts. But just as she finished speaking, Lemon Sweet suddenly lowered the corners of her mouth in disappointment. The anti-addiction system is warning again. Their real time had reached the moment when they had to go to bed and rest. So no matter how reluctant they were to leave, they finally bid farewell to Chonghua and went offline, disappearing into thin air one by one. It was already dusk in the game at this time. She glanced at the woods that were quietly darkened by night, opened the map, identified the direction, and headed all the way to the nearby Foaming Town. The forest she was in was so big that it took Chonghua more than an hour to reach her destination. At this time, the game world was already shrouded in night. Human footprints in the 32nd century are all over the universe. Players in Jianghu come from various planets and time zones. Even if there is a difference between day and night in the game, there is no difference for the players. Except for the ordinary NPCs living in the town who have closed their doors to rest, the center of the town is brightly lit, full of people and bustling with activity. Foaming Town connects several major sects in the southwest. Several dungeons in Jianghu suitable for middle and upper class players are also near Foaming Town. Businessmen and knights from the Jianghu gather here. It's just that the terrain in the southwest is steep, with many ferocious birds and beasts, and good and evil people from all 3 religions and 9 streams mixed in. Most Jianghu players who are not strong enough do not dare to come near Foaming Town. In Jianghu, players cannot know each other's skill level. They can only judge whether the other party's skill is stronger or weaker than themselves through their aura. Chonghua's internal strength was dragged down by debuff, and his power was greatly reduced, but he still attracted attention among everyone. Everyone who noticed her secretly guessed which sect she was a senior disciple of. Chonghua didn't care about other people's eyes. As soon as she arrived in Foaming Town, she went straight to the auction house and registered all the newly prepared medicines and pills here for sale. While Meng Tian and the others were chatting, Chonghua learned from the side that Jianghu players need to spend a lot of energy, time, and money if they want to practice life skills. Ordinary players spend most of their time practicing internal skills and skills. So, except for a few life players, most people don't practice life skills. This resulted in a shortage of finished products of life skills. Potions and snacks were very expensive, and even some superficial clothes and weapons could be sold at a good price, not to mention equipment with good properties, which was priceless but not marketable. As Lemon Sweet said, all kinds of pharmaceutical snacks are consumables that are in short supply. As soon as she put it up, they were all swept away. And she, who originally didn't have a single copper plate, finally exchanged these items for her first pot of gold. Looking at the silver coins in the package, Chonghua felt confident. She did a rough study of the various items sold on the auction house and found that most of the low-level materials needed for her life skills could be purchased here. She guessed that those high-level materials could also be obtained in the game, but she just needed to go to a more advanced map. This shows that those antidote potions can still be made, but the process of obtaining the materials will be a lot more troublesome, and she will need to take continuous blood-increasing pills for a long time to ensure freedom of movement. Thinking of this, Chonghua suddenly felt a sense of urgency. She glanced at the auction house again and purchased various materials in large quantities. She didn't stop until the packages could no longer be loaded, and she was going to find an inn to make all these things. But as soon as he left the auction house, he saw 2 or 3 people fighting at the door. No, to be precise, it was a one-sided massacre. The strongest person is a man in ordinary clothes. His face is not designed to be handsome or beautiful like most players. He uses an ordinary random face shape. His weapon was a freely retractable iron rope. The top of the iron rope was shaped like a claw, and the tail end was held in the man's hand. In just a few minutes, the 3 or 2 weak trumpets were seriously injured. And as the trumpet fell to the ground, the inconspicuous clothes on his body added a bit of red. Soul-destroying lock. Someone recognized the man's moves. Seeing his deadly moves, they couldn't help but sigh. He does the soul-destroying lock very well. He seems to be another master. You actually killed someone in the street. Are you here to seek revenge? While the onlookers were discussing, the man threw the chain again, and the target was the innocent people who were watching curiously. Why are you crazy? The onlooker was a melee fighter who was good at using palm skills. He barely dodged and resisted and shouted angrily, "Someone call the guard. This guy is crazy." The chained man seemed not to have heard anything and forcefully killed this relatively strong man. Everyone was in an uproar. Seeing that something was wrong, several trumpets wanted to escape quickly, but saw the man dragging the fleeing people over with a few moves. The cold chains were like urging demons in the night. Those few trumpets fell to the ground without much resistance, either because they were too scared or for some other reason. Suddenly, the man's eyes changed, and he looked straight at Zhonghua. Chapter 3. The other party's eyes were full of murderous intent, which made Chonghua's heart tremble. Sure enough, a black chain rushed towards her like a dragon wandering in the dark night. She subconsciously dodged. Instead of advancing, she retreated. She drew out the long sword on her back with her right hand and used her sudden move to dodge in front of the man. She moved very quickly, turning her wrist, and the tip of the sword stabbed the man at an extremely tricky angle, so fast and hard that there was no time to avoid it. The man's gaze paused, and he did not dodge. The chains rattled as he moved his hands, and the sharp iron cable head as sharp as an eagle's claw hit Chomhua's vest directly. Chomhua didn't know which of the two of them had higher HP, so he didn't dare to push away, so he had to retract his sword and do a backflip to avoid the chain attack. At this time, the system belatedly beeped. The player, when the wind rises, maliciously attacks you. The back and forth between the two of them lasted only a moment, but they shocked the people around them. They thought that the woman in black would become another person who died in chains, but they didn't expect that there would be a turning point. Chomhua didn't know what the people around him were thinking, so he stepped forward with his sword. She had only been in this holographic game for a few days, and although there were still many unfamiliar places, she had been fighting with the NPC in the past few days and had accumulated a lot of experience. Compared with keyboard online games, various moves in holographic online games are easier to master. Those skills are like instinct and can be used as soon as the mind moves. After she got a little familiar with it, everything after that became much smoother.